We are back, and today we are going to talk about a new consumer guide that NAR just put out. And this consumer guide has to do with escrow and earnest money. And again, as I've mentioned, if you've watched any of the previous videos I've done on the consumer guides, these are primarily focused on residential real estate. NAR doesn't really have any of these consumer guides for commercial real estate. I think it's possible they could in the future, but for right now they do not. And as I've explained in other videos, the idea is that when you are dealing with commercial real estate and you're dealing with business people, you're dealing with people who are a little more sophisticated, who maybe do not need the same level of precaution because through their business practices, they're more experienced and they know a lot of this stuff. So, but I do think that this one in particular, since this involves lending really, would also be something that commercial people would be interested in. So as I've done with the others, I'm largely going to read this and I may make a few comments just to make sure that I'm covering the points that NAR has in this. So let's get started. Consumer Guide to Escrow and Earnest Money. One of the steps between signing and closing on a home or property is when the home buyers typically deposit money into an escrow account. An agent who is a realtor can help advise you on your offer and how help keep your deposits safe. When it comes to escrow, here's what home buyers or property buyers should know. What is escrow? Escrow is a financial agreement in which a third party, such as an attorney or another settlement or title agent, controls payments between the buyer and the seller, only releasing the funds involved when all the terms of the contract are met. As the buyer, once you close on the home, the money you placed in escrow will often be applied toward your down payment and other closing costs. Other costs that can be covered by funds in an escrow include property taxes and insurance premiums. What is earnest money? Also known as a good faith deposit, an earnest money deposit is paid by a buyer to show their interest is legitimate and that they intend to close on a property. This may be a percentage of the purchase price or a set amount. To protect the funds, earnest money will be held securely in an escrow account until closing or any disputes are resolved. An escrow account is not set up by your lender with a third party, such as a bank, title company, escrow account, or mortgage servicer. I misread that. I said not, but I misread the word. Is often set up by your lender with a third party, such as a bank, title company, escrow agent, or mortgage servicer. During this time, the buyer and seller will be unable to access the funds. Importantly, the earnest money is not the same as a down payment, which is the money you put toward the home purchase price, which I think that's a confusing thing to say. So your down payment may be and normally is more than what you put into escrow. But the escrow can be counted against that down payment when you get to closing. What happens to the earnest money deposit if the transaction is canceled or interrupted? If the seller stops the sale, the funds in an escrow are returned to the buyer. Additionally, if contingencies included in the purchase contract, such as a home inspection, appraisal, or financing, are unable to be resolved, then the money gets refunded to the buyer. However, if the buyer interrupts the sale for other reasons, the seller may get to keep the money. For example, if a buyer waives contingencies prematurely, fails to meet set deadlines, or gets cold feet and abandons the transaction, among other circumstances, this could result in the loss of their earnest money deposit. Work with your agent and legal professional to ensure you understand the terms of your contract to avoid putting the transaction and your money at risk. So I would say that that's one of those things that you really do need to kind of think through. It's not an automatic thing. There will be disputes over whether or not each party did what they said and whether or not it meant what you said. And so it does have to kind of get resolved. It's not an automatic thing. However, I think more than 50% of the cases, I would say really 80% or more of the cases, maybe even more than 90% of the cases, honestly, if it's just not working out, both parties usually just go ahead and agree, and the money goes back to the buyer. But not always. I mean, there can be things where people, and lots of times, just kind of keep in mind, taking a property off the market, that's not necessarily at no cost to the seller. The seller can be, they can miss out on other opportunities, and sometimes they have to pay costs and things associated with that. So there are legitimate reasons that the seller might object. All right, let's keep moving. Is an earnest money deposit required? There are no laws requiring an earnest money deposit to be attached to a home offer. However, it is common practice, particularly in some competitive markets, and when a buyer's down payment is less than 20% of the purchase price. Certain sellers may require or request earnest money deposits or look favorably on offers that include them. So it is legal to not have any money attached in it, and but the truth of the matter is that I would say in 99% of the cases, maybe 100% of the cases, if the buyer is not willing to put down any money at all, normally the seller just probably is not going to take that offer. In fact, most of the time they probably won't even look at it, because one of the things, if they're going to take it off the market, they want to have a pretty good idea that it's going to close. And if the person doesn't put up any money, the questions that they have is, why didn't they put up money? It seems like they're not very serious about this, or they'd be willing to put some money down. Or the other question is do they just not have any money? Maybe they don't have any money, and if they don't have any money, how are they going to be able to close? And so the seller will have legitimate questions about that. So even though you can have a sales contract without any earnest money down, I think if you really are serious about buying the property, you need to be willing and able to put some money down, because you probably will not be able to buy the property unless you do that. How much earnest money should I offer? Earnest money deposits can be any amount, but typically the range is 1 to 10% of the property purchase price. The size of your deposit may depend on several factors, including the competitiveness of the market, your down payment amount, whether to include contingencies in your offer, and the seller's preferences. Fixed earnest money amounts rather than percentages of the home sale are also becoming common in some regions. And I think you just have to ask your agent. And I would also say is different agents probably have different ways that they typically handle that. I will say that, again, especially if it's a very, very competitive market, let's say it's a situation where the seller is expecting to have multiple offers. Let's say, so I'm just going to put this question out to you who are buyers. If you're watching this, it's like if you get 6 offers and they are all basically identical, but one person puts down, $10,000 and another person puts down $500, which is the contract you think is more likely to go through? I mean, which person do you think is probably more committed to making this go through? And which person do you feel more certain has the money to be able to do it? So you can see why the seller would lean that way. So that is one thing, that in a competitive market, your agent may be encouraging you, if you're a buyer, to put up more money to make your contract look more attractive to the seller. Are there any risk to placing my money in an escrow account? As with any transaction, the risk for fraud exists when wiring money, but there are steps you can take to protect yourself during the home closing process involving the transfer of funds. Your agent can educate you on how to avoid falling victim to wire fraud scams. Always confirm wire instructions with your bank, lender, or any known parties involved in person or on the phone before initiating the transfer. Check out NAR's resource on protecting your money from scams here. And so they have some links here for you to follow. And as I've done with the others, I'll put a link to this consumer guide. And then if you can read it, you can get the links to the other resources. And so we'll just quick comment on that. I would say that I also want to reemphasize the stuff we talked before, in that there can be legitimate reasons that if you put money down and there's a dispute about those funds, the contract for whatever reason does not go through, there can be a dispute about those funds, and it's not certain who will get that money until you kind of go through that dispute resolution. So you do have that. The other thing about wire fraud, that is a bigger deal. I would say, I don't know, 15 or more years ago, overwhelmingly, I would say the financial institutions at that time said, oh man, we are moving all toward wiring money because it's so much more secure. That is no longer the case. There have been a bunch of scams. Lots of times these scammers, I don't know exactly how they do it, but they are able to monitor people's email accounts, and they will see if there's a request, and they will copy, the bank or the real estate agents or the lending or any of those guys. They will copy their emails, all of that stuff, so that you think you're getting an email from them. And they, there was a guy here in town, and it was a real estate broker. It wasn't like, a consumer or a client. It was a real estate broker. They saw an email going between them and their client about closing, and they copied the email and they sent it to the broker and told them to send the funds to a certain area. And he thought he was communicating with the closing attorney, and they did. And they sent, it was quite a bit of money. I can't remember what it was. It was I think it was tens of thousands of dollars that they lost because of that. So you have to be very careful about that. You need to, and so, the banks and the lenders, they're aware of this. And so they do have certain protocols you have to follow. But I guess I wanted to take a couple of minutes because that is super important. Be sure and bring that up with your agent, with your closing attorneys, title companies, whatever it is, and make sure you know for certain the proper protocol there, so that you do not end up victim to a scam and lose a lot of money. And the final thing, practices may vary based upon state law and local law. Consult your real estate professional and or attorney for details about how state law, where you are purchasing or selling your home. And you can visit facts.realtor for more information and resources. So, and that is true. That is another thing. These things are generally true. I mean, this is a very common way to do it. So it is going to be the same or similar pretty much throughout the United States. It may be a little different in different countries. In fact, I know it'll be a little bit different in different countries. But for the US, these are generally true. But you always have to check and make sure that, because state laws, real estate laws are state laws, they're not national laws. And so you do need to make sure that you understand the rules in that particular area. So I hope you found this helpful. I have a bunch of other consumer guides that NAR has done in a playlist you can look at. If you have other questions about this or about real estate in general, you can leave questions or comments in the comments. As I said in the description, I'll put a link to this NAR consumer guide. I'll also put a link to my website. If you want to reach out to me, again, you can put something in the comments, or if you want to, I'll leave a link to my website. You can go to my website and you can leave me questions there as well. So I am David McCoy. My company is Otimo Properties. I'm based here in Louisville, Kentucky. I primarily do commercial real estate. I do a little bit of residential, and I do some global real estate. I am licensed in Kentucky and in Indiana. So if you have any questions, let me know, reach out to me. And I think that I've covered, if you're wondering about this, I'm not 100% sure that I'm required to do this. However, there are different laws about advertising, and there are some people, I don't think that in Kentucky that they consider doing a video like this advertising, but if they do consider it advertising, I do have to disclose. I have to name myself, name my company, where I work, where I'm licensed, and all those things, just to be sure that we're protecting the consumer. So I know I'm running a little long on those kinds of things, but if you're wondering why I always do that, that is why, is I do want to make sure that I'm complying with any regs that they may have here in Kentucky and in Indiana. So that's it, my friends. We will wrap it up, and thank you for watching. If you thought this was helpful, maybe you can give me a like, or maybe you can share it with somebody else who might benefit from this. If you're interested in real estate topics and want to follow along, you might click the subscribe. Also, you don't necessarily have to reach out to me for information. You might check through the other videos that I've done. I've made a bunch of videos about various topics. And it could be, if you have questions, that there's already a video that discusses some of those things that you might find helpful. And so that's it. Let's wrap it up. And thank you so much for watching. And hopefully I will see you again at a future video. Take care, my friends. Bye.